John Miyake, University of Oregon Cybersecurity Operations Center Manager.
And Kylan, Curran, Student Security Analyst at the Information Security Office.
Okay, this session is the Hugen and Munin Bringing Complexity to Clarity. It's designing a single pane of glass for the University of Oregon Cybersecurity Operations Center and the programs, the training, the ideas behind it support it. So we're going to go over some of the challenges and approach the models of framework, the application development that we are taking to address the challenges that we're going to speak to here shortly. But first, a little bit about the CSOC.
The University of Oregon Cybersecurity Operations Center employs a team of student security analysts who handle daily security investigations and operations. These students bring various levels of experience, from just starting in the field to 2 to 3 years of hands-on operational experience. To ensure consistent, high-quality service delivery across all skill levels, we combine comprehensive training programs and standardized incident response playbooks in our internally developed cybersecurity tool called Hugen and Munin. The CSOC consists of 2 staff members and 9 students. These students come from a variety of academic backgrounds, such as computer science, data science, journalism, and art and technology, though in the past we've also had students majoring in business, philosophy, or architecture. Our rotation of roles consists of CSOC, incident response, and compliance and DevSecOps. CSOC is our entry role, dealing with mostly phishing and alerts. Incident response deals with threat hunting involving malware investigations and compromised systems or accounts. Compliance deals with DMCA investigations and outreach. And our development security operations deals with the development of our internal tools and applications, Hugen and Munin being one of them. Each role generally supports shared daily operations and is assigned projects based on an individual basis. Having a specified role provides students with the opportunity to learn and grow from several different approaches to cybersecurity. This is another view of our office, which you can see each desk setup consists of 3 to 4 monitors, allowing for larger projects and visibility. The TV screens on the walls display a number of our security dashboards, each rotating through different information that is being monitored throughout the day. Getting into the complexity of cybersecurity data, some of the challenges student analysts face being so new to the threat landscape and investigation process are tool overload, a steep learning curve, slow detection and response skills, and low visibility. Having too many tools leads to a fragmented view of data, disconnected workflows, and an overall sense of overwhelm, especially when an analyst is unsure of which tool to use or what information to gather from extensive output. The learning curve to cybersecurity has only grown steeper as tools and threats evolve. As a result, we see students taking more time than expected to document their findings and form conclusions based on that data, which reduces detection and response speed, also leaving new analysts feeling hesitant, frustrated, or uncertain. So how do we make this extensive and complex information more accessible to new analysts? We break it into the 4 layers of understanding. At the base, we have data, which consists of the raw facts and basic details with no meaning or context on their own. Next, we build on that data with information by processing and organizing it into a structure of concepts, relationships, and context, which requires close study and attention to detail. After processing information, we can gain knowledge, which is the result of analyzing and contextualizing information. When one knows what they're dealing with, they can use that information to achieve a goal and begin the problem-solving process. And finally, the deepest layer of understanding is wisdom, which involves the insightful and practical application of knowledge to make informed decisions, navigate complex situations, and approach new scenarios with efficiency. This layered approach to understanding allows for structured and intentional learning, enabling the users to work on components independently before integrating them into a cohesive whole.
All right. So we start with a broad foundation, and we sort of begin mapping those concepts out and introducing them to the analyst. It's a lot to take in, and so we often leverage things like playbooks and training and just direct engagement with them. We work with them to develop the concepts and the connections to build that foundation and that infrastructure so that they can, over time, understand the details and the depth of the information. And as they grow in their understanding and their confidence, they start to integrate and refine that information and start working more closely with it. And so kind of the overall program concepts here we're talking about, just not as an application, but as the CSOC in general, is that we're kind of developing the next generation of cybersecurity professionals or enthusiasts, if you prefer. So we're working with them so they're able to look beyond the data forest to see the individual trees, but also the other way around, to see the individual trees beyond the forest, so they can understand that complex technical world that we live in. This can be an uphill battle. Cybersecurity is an ever-changing field with new challenges always around the corner. The daily operational data is both technical and vast. The combination of this can easily overwhelm and leading to analysis paralysis for analysts that are just starting. We rely on things like tools like Hugan and Munin, which is the internal developed application we're speaking about, and teaching models like the OODA loop, which is the orient, observe, this is a device, but I should say decide and act, to provide analysts with a means to improve overall time to respond and quality of response. In the end, we are working towards the idea of fast is smooth and smooth is fast. We're kind of bringing them to a point that they're confident that they can do things in a fluid fashion, but they're not rushing. They're taking their time to make an understanding and a decision. So what is that like for an analyst in that case? It comes back to this, they ask the initial question, what is an IP address? What is a MAC address? They move forward to what does an alert actually mean? And as they grow and understand, they ask more questions like, how do I respond to this thing? And their confidence improves. They reach a point of, I have a handle on this. I know what I'm doing. And as they progress further and further in their confidence and their understanding of this complex field, they ask us questions like, why are we not doing this? Which is great. It's great to have these questions from them as they gain this understanding. And eventually they reach a level, and unfortunately at that point they graduate typically, where they're mentoring other incoming security analysts, and we start the cycle over again. So OODA loop. For folks that are not familiar with OODA loop, we kind of use this to break that analysis paralysis, right? It gives them a basic framework of observe, orient, decide, and act, where they can rely on that to figure out, what do I do next? And have a very easy steps to progress. We do use playbooks, but playbooks can get complex. This gives them an opportunity to understand, where am I? Where do I need to go next? And so observe is basically the initial data collection. Intelligence, network activity, user account activity. And orient is taking that, correlating it, comparing it, and building context. And this is where the Hugan Munin application comes in. It helps provide focused data and helps build context along the things like IP addresses and users and those kind of objects. And once they've oriented, they got to decide, what am I doing next? What playbook do I use? Do I have a playbook for this? Do I need to escalate this, mitigate it, communicate it? What's the next step? And then action. And action is a little bit more complex than just doing the thing. It's actually doing the thing, making sure that it occurred the way you expected, validate the results, and then document, communicate, and do a continuous improvement. And all of a sudden, your OODA loop starts up again.
Our main application that student analysts leverage for investigation and information gathering is Hugan and Munin. This application, designed and developed by our students, is named after Odin's legendary ravens from Norse mythology. Representing memory and thought, this dashboard embodies the ravens' roles as information gatherers and wisdom providers. As such, our dashboard gathers data from multiple sources to provide comprehensive situational awareness. Hugan and Munin presents analysts with a unified single pane of glass interface that delivers a view of IP addresses, MAC addresses, and user accounts by integrating data from internal and external sources. This tool leverages multiple resources to help analysts more quickly assess potential risks associated with individuals or assets, enabling them to make more informed decisions about alert criticality and reduce preventable false positives. Later in this presentation, we will explore the tool's core functionality and examine the underlying design principles that drive its effectiveness, creating a unified data views, maintaining balanced perspectives on security indicators, and enhancing analyst awareness of potential threats. Hugan and Munin supports our student-centered approach to cybersecurity operations that provides invaluable real-world training for the next generation of cybersecurity professionals. Along the central concept of secure by design, we emphasize that we are building security professionals with the fundamental security knowledge needed to operate independently. Hugan and Munin is a core part of our toolset that's used for this and was designed with the following in mind: role-based access, real-time visibility, correlated insights, and unified information and context. Essentially, this provides analysts with the tools needed to gather and analyze information in a single pane of glass format. Removing the need to navigate between resources and parse through and focus data employs a clear and digestible approach to moving through investigations. We aim to make our analysts feel empowered and confident with the idea that knowledge leads to understanding and understanding leads to confidence.
All right, so it's all about unified data and focused information, right? So we're collecting data from a variety of different points, providing context to them. We're translating these abundant logs from your sim into a more focused content that's easy to digest, right? If you look at the sim and a log entry, there's a whole bunch of fields. Most of those you're not using to make a decision. You're looking at key ones that, for an analyst is starting, if they're just seeing the entire field of data that's there for a single log entry, it's confusing when they really just need a few key objects. Now, we're not saying that they don't get access to the other data. They do get access to that data. But when they're starting to look at things, we provide with a more focused view. And we're also making the data more portable so that we can share it between analysts or put into tickets. We're also using methods to form connections and visualize those connections between data objects.
In the lookup section of Hugen and Munin, we currently use 3 formats for queries, each offering independent data points. The first format, user queries, provides data on user notes that holds relevant information provided by other analysts, such as known activities or past investigations. Also, a user account overview with the user's name, affiliation, department, and identified risks on their account. The image to the left of the screen is our university CISO, Jose Dominguez, and he has 3 identified risks on his account, 2 of which are identified as high risk. And this is a good example of a user that we would want to be a lot more careful in investigating because there would be a higher impact if compromised. And student analysts would most likely want to elevate this user to a senior analyst or full-time staff member. Other user query features include reports of training module completion, associated tickets, sessions, firewall events, external breaches identified on their email, and authentication events with MFA data. The image on the right represents the entire output of this user query in a single pane of glass format. Though considerably a very long pane of glass, analysts are able to form a single query and receive several data points to understand log data by referencing contextual information. The second format that we use is an IP query. This format functions for both internal and external IPs, though they offer their own data points. For either internal or external IPs, we can identify domain information such as location, hostname, and device types, VPN and proxy information, known vulnerabilities and malicious behavior, and associated threat intelligence. Unique to internal IPs, we can also see sessions, sign-ins, tickets, and fine-tuned device information such as subnets, MAC addresses, and jack numbers. Overall, we get a useful view of what this device is, where it's coming from, and why it might be benign or malicious in relation to the observed activity. Finally, we have a MAC address query format. From this type of query, our data points consist of network information on the device, location and user, associated tickets, and sessions on the network. This type of query is most useful when performing malware investigations and provides valuable information to support analysts' documentation. Another essential concept to Hugen and Munin's lookup function, as well as any other part of the application's development, is what am I missing and what can make this better? Each query format utilizes a sense of data points to support analysts in gaining knowledge and understanding into security on our network, and only continues to grow as students integrate more tools as they deem necessary.
So this is the portion of the Hugen Munin. So we like to call it a single pane of glass. It kind of is, but it's not. We add additional contents to the side that help improve and visualize some of the information for the analyst. One of it is node graph, where we're looking at the connections between IP addresses and the user and services and IP to geo to ASN information about the organizations those IPs are assigned to, those ISPs. And we're enriching those data points with more information from API calls, both from internal resources and external resources. But the core focus on this node graph is that visual design to help folks understand. And it's really kind of useful for analysts starting up because it gives them a more clean view of things that it's just not words on the screen. So what we're using here is PyVes. To crawl, we're going to start them pretty simple. They're going to see things like this, and then look at the different connections between the IP addresses and the ISP, like University of Oregon Network, and the different regions. And originally this was designed as a means to do correlation between activity by threat actors, but it's also just as useful to look at an individual activity for a user to build context, which is normal, and what stands out. So they crawl. They see this simple form looking at a simple thing. But as we talked about, you can start looking at more complex things. This is a multi-day view of a single user. And so as they grow more confident with the data, they can start looking at these more complex pictures and see the overall forest and understand what's happening, and also zoom into the trees. And here's a more example where they're running. This is an example of multiple user accounts being correlated either off IP address or even just a single day's activity. And as the connections grow, the nodes grow, and the colors change to also exemplify that increase in density of connections. As we were saying, knowledge leads to wisdom. So as we build these things up, they become more confident in what they're doing, and that wisdom leads to confidence, as we were saying. And so they can look at the bigger picture and zoom in the smaller picture and have a good sense of what's happening.
Another section of Hugen and Munin, titled Measured Indicators of Compromise, allows analysts to analyze threat indicators, identify known true and false positives, prioritize incidents, and visualize risk levels. This page lists indicators of compromise, their confidence in indicator levels, local identifiers, known false positives, and their assigned score. When checked, the available indicators are visualized into a cyber threat analysis chart. Listing a measure of indicators of compromise allows analysts to learn what behaviors are known for malicious versus benign behavior and how to approach each indicator. When checked, an indicator will provide a visual icon depending on that threat score that is associated with it. The first indicator level is low. This activity will most likely be benign.
In case you're wondering, yes, this is one of the indicators we use.
Yes, we use these emojis. The next indicator level is medium. This is where we begin to suspect that the activity may be of concern. And a high-risk level indicates the activity is concerning and warrants further investigation. A critical indicator implies that there's a low number of false positives associated with this activity, and the system or account is most likely compromised, or that the collective indicators that have been selected reaches a high enough level of concern.
And some of our analysts, they're enthused with this. They like this. Some of our folks, particularly our designers, they're not so keen on this. So what we're trying to do with this tool, at least this portion of Hugen and Munin, is help analysts understand and balance out the duality of some of those indicators. We tend to lean towards it's malicious. We see an alert, it must be malicious, right? Not always malicious, right? There's other reasons for things. So we ask them, kind of form this idea of a Venn diagram. What are the reasons why it's malicious? What's the reasons why it's benign? And this portion of the tool, this indicator portion, helps analysts see that both as those emojis, but also via other methods. So this is kind of the concept here, right? Impossible travel. Impossible travel is when you have activity for an account, for example, occurring from two diverse geographical regions where travel is unlikely to be possible. So here in Eugene, Oregon, and in Russia, why are we seeing the activity? Well, unfortunately, there are some benign reasons for that, and it does happen quite frequently. So university communities like to use privacy tools. Sometimes that's Tor, less frequent, but more commonly things like commercial VPNs. That's very common. Also, which is also common here, we have faculty and staff who go on international travel, for business or otherwise. They leave their device active, which is still logging onto resources, and then they're connecting from wherever they're visiting. Again, a benign reason. And they get kind of unhappy if we turn them off, right? They're in China or Hawaii or whatever, and they don't like it when we turn them off, which is a reasonable response. But so we have to evaluate these and balance these concepts. Another one is reported MFA fraud. You would think, hey, MFA fraud, if they're reporting it, it must be 100% accurate. Not really. We do see a high degree of folks saying, hey, fraud. And you look into it, and it happens to be their account. They somehow have misreported. Some cases, it's situations where the device is doing things they don't know, valid things, but most often it's just them accidentally misreporting. Campus IP is detected port scanning. Again, you think, hey, that would be bad. Yeah, typically it is bad. However, we do have benign situations. Vendor, contractors, they come to campus, they're looking for the device that they're supposed to be working on. They don't know the IP address. The local IT may not know the IP address either, so what they do, they scan. Sometimes they're on the actual subnet they're supposed to be on, and sometimes they're not. We also have situations like computer and information sciences, not services, during network research. Typically, this happens from known subnets where we expect to see the activity. But with graduates and undergraduates, that sometimes happens in places where it's not been known to happen reasonably, meaning they do it from the wireless, or they do it from ResNet, the residential networks, or other connections they have on campus. Another example is malware detection. Again, you would think this is a strong indicator, and typically it is, but not always. These are, again, computer information sciences, security research. We've had that recently, or even CTFs. When we have students are participating in capture the flag for cybersecurity, they're using tools that can trigger alerts if they're on a managed system. So this is an example of, again, that emoji, but also what we're using here is a radar or a spider graph. And as the indicator changes and its value for false positive and our confidence in it changes, as well as the severity of it, this spider graph will change. And typically you'll see the confidence rise and the threat score, and it gets cumulative. Now, as I page through this, we didn't actually set a user on this, so the user risk won't change. So as we set these different indicators, or the analyst sets it, as you see, the emoji increases, it's grimacing now, and that value on the spider graph increases. Again, same thing here. Now it's more severe. That confidence level is high. Unfortunately, that threat score is not correct. However, I'm sure you understand what I'm trying to say here. And again, another example here as we progressively have, higher confidence, higher score in the threat. And this is all together. Alrighty. Oh, and so what you're seeing here is actually the page itself. So I was showing you before the actual components. The emojis there in the right hand, top right hand, small, the spider graphs on the left hand side. As the analyst selects these objects, these items, and checks boxes, the ones that apply to what they're reviewing, this score changes on the screen, both for the emoji as well as for the spider graph. And really what we see, this is largely used by the analysts that are just getting started. The ones that don't have the understanding, don't have the knowledge to fully understand what they're looking at and what the situations where they may be malicious and where they may be benign. As they progress in their understanding, we see less and less of their use of this. But however, it is useful for them to do this because, at least in the original POC design, this would also float to the top, to the Hugen and Munion portion of the page, that single pane of glass, where you could take that as a copy or a downloaded file and share with other analysts or add it to your ticket for your investigation.
And that brings us to our final point of today's presentation, what's next? Our next steps for Hugen and Munion include integrating relevant templates and playbooks for students to follow along in their investigations and support the learning process, generating tickets such as compromised system tickets directly from Hugen and Munion, formulating and displaying results based on the type of investigation and necessary data points, and automatic identifier correlations and analysis. For example, if a user has multiple accounts associated with them or multiple MAC addresses, listing those and also providing their individual Hugen and Munion query results. Also potentially integrating AI with the intention of finding data points such as malicious IPs or failed sign-ons that have a higher likelihood of indicating compromise and informing the analyst of that correlation. Our intention is not to have the application do the work for our students, but rather to function as a tool to promote wisdom and understanding from the information and data that's provided by Hugen and Munion.
All right. So we left a lot of the technical details off of this presentation, mostly because it's recorded. So if you have high-level questions, ask them. If you have more technical in-depth questions where you want to know implementation, you can ask them, but come up and ask them in person so we can address those. Questions? Yes, sir.
Did Jose give you permission to use that photo?
He did not. However, he's the one that signed. He's the one that encouraged me to present. So there has to be some pain, I suspect. Yes, sir.
So, wondering how, in the incident response process, are students brought along to see kind of what has happened to their alerts and how, when it actually is an incident, gets resolved? Kind of.
So our students, the analysts are students. They go through the entire process. Now, that being said, we don't just chuck them into the grinder or to the wolves or the sharks. Choose your vicious thing of choice. We tend to lead them into evil, I guess. I don't know. The situation. We're there to help them. We're there to give them the tools, the fundamental understanding, the frameworks to help move them along the process of understanding. Yes.
This might be a come up and ask question, but how are you getting your event, especially the suspicious event data, into Hugon and Immune? Is it a push?
So it's a pull situation. So we are pulling from a SIM,
Okay.
or we're pulling from other APIs to pull into that application.
Do you want to mention what sim you're using?
Oh, we can do it afterwards. Any other questions? You're an easy audience. Okay, now my colleague here will ask the troubling question.
Is it open source?
It is open source in that we'll willingly share code once it's actually at a level of sharing code. So this is internal applications, internally developed. Some of the aspects are POC, and as POC things are, they can be organic, which is the share. A lot of our code is probably organic in some ways as we work on things. At some point, I'd love to be able to share it, but right now it's not at that point. Yes, another evil colleague in the background.
So, Kylan, as an example, what percentage of the students that come through the seesaw end up going on to career in cybersecurity? Do you have any idea?
A percentage. A significant number of them do. We tend to attract folks that are actually interested in cybersecurity. Not all of them do. Some of them are IT with strong cybersecurity responsibilities. Some of them choose not to do cybersecurity at all. But we do see a large, significant number that do enter those fields. Another evil colleague? Wow, this is they're picking on me today.
What tools do the students move on to after they've sort of, you were saying that, Hugon and Moon is where you throw some of the more novice students in?
They all use this. They all use the same tool. So the challenge here is that we have a diverse tool set, and it's a diverse technical tool set. The interface is not unified. They're all different. There's a large uplift to be able to use those efficiently and effectively. And we find that, and maybe Kylan can speak to this as well, that analysts tend to use Hugon and Immune to start with, and then they may go on to some of our other tools that we have that are feeding into the SIM and then feed into Hugon and Immune. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so I find that typically I'll use Hugon and Immune for the initial data to perform a query and then get all of the contextual information that I need, and then use the terminal to find all of the log data that is more particular to my investigation.
And that's probably a good point. So this is not a SIM. It's backed by a SIM. It's also backed by other data points. But it pulls together a lot of the contextual information about things that are not in the SIM. Right? It's pulling from inventory. It's pulling them from AD. It's pulling on those data points that you're not usually seeing in a SIM platform. So you can build an understanding, like, that alert I saw. Oh, it's a professor in computer science who's doing research, right? That helps you build that context. Or this IP address over here is a high-risk IP address because it's with this department, and we see this additional information with that. That's what part of what Hugon Immune is providing, is that, as well as that context to make a decision about the risk and what might be happening with that. I think I've run out of colleagues. Is there anyone else with questions? Yes, I got more colleagues than Chess over here. So Duncan first, and then...
And this may be more of a Kylan question, but how do you sort of evolve the tool? Like, as you start learning about, more about cybersecurity, how are you able to sort of either use the tool more in depth or move up to that higher level of
improving? What are the opportunities there?
Well, I think that as we're improving, we're adding more tools into Hugin. So we're finding as you progress, as you do these investigations and use Hugin and Munin as a launching point to get all of that information, there's inevitably more that you need. So sometimes you will be looking at log data, and then eventually you'll think, maybe I could integrate this into that result, and that would help me. And that's kind of the progression stage.
And then you have the opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
That's part of your student. That's cool.
And that's a key thing we tell the analyst, right? You're doing the work. You're running into problems. You should also look towards the solutions, right? I'm not doing that work as much. When I did the work, yeah, I had problems. I found the solutions because they irritated me. I wanted to have something that was easier, better, faster, you know? So we really encourage the analysts to look at these opportunities to change some of the way we do our workflow so that it's more effective for them. Right? We don't want it to solve the problem. Solve the problem for everyone would just be turn things off, right? That'd be the easy, well, from the security perspective, not for the user perspective or the IT perspective, but, you know, it's something where because they're doing the work, they have the first line understanding of where they can improve it.
My question is, Kevin, just curious, what's one or two surprises that you learned, didn't necessarily anticipate from this experience, this opportunity, that you think you're going to take with you no matter where your profession takes you?
Yeah.
Post this opportunity.
So I was one of those people that started with absolutely no information, no background in cybersecurity. So basically just about all of my experience is helpful, but I think that one of the things that really stands out to me is analyzing and parsing that log data and then also integrating that into Hugin and Munin. I have created some of the data points myself as I've advanced and learned that process of getting things in there. So I think that development and just kind of the analysis skills have been incredibly beneficial and convinced me to potentially join the cybersecurity field. So it's been a great opportunity.
How long do you, and if you don't want to answer because I'm asking a you question, but how long were you kind of in that analysis paralysis phase or mode before you were able to move past that?
I think that that is something that kind of comes back in ways. There's, of course, like the initial getting into the field and like learning and kind of feeling like, I need anyone else to look over this for about a month or so. And then, you know, you begin to understand it and you're like, I can do this. I know the process. I know the steps. And then you find new issues and new matters to feel that paralysis for. But again, you learn and you move forward, and it's kind of just this process of, you know, analysis paralysis, but then breakthroughs.
More questions? In the back of the room, sir.
Do you have a ballpark number of the number of endpoints and user accounts you're monitoring for this tool?
Ballpark figure.
More than 4.
He is correct. What is our user count? Like, is it a lot? Yeah, it's a lot. I have those numbers somewhere. I just don't have them on the top of my head. It's tens of thousands, both for users and for endpoints.
Is it mostly just end-user endpoint monitoring, or are you able to monitor like network equipment?
All the above. So it's all involved, yes. If it touches the network or it logs in somewhere, it feeds into a system that's being that can be accessed through Hugin typically.
How long before you package it up and sell it?
That's a good question. I don't know. Probably never, right? But if you want to build one or you want to know how we're doing it, talk with us. Stop by. We're happy to talk you through the process. A lot of the stuff we're doing here is specific to our systems. So in order to make it open source, we'd have to make it more modular. And that's a great thing to do because it makes it more sustainable and maintainable over time. But it'll be a little while before we get there because we do have our day jobs. There you go. So you're encouraging me, sir, to break out and start selling it.
Yeah.
Ah.
Multigo's expensive. I need an alternative.
Oh, there you go. Good to know. Anyone else with questions? Oh, I'm sorry.
I was going to ask how long and how many people did it take to build this?
It's a continual process. So we typically run as between 9 to 14 students. We're currently down to 9. And we have 2 staff in the CSOC. We have more staff in the security office, but in the CSOC we have 2. This portion, like the node graph's only been in development for, I want to say 3 to 4 months. And that's only just as we have time. Hugin and Munin, we've had students working on that for, it's a continual improvement process. Is that 2 years now? It was longer as a POC when I originally wrote the original concept, but the students took it over, and I think it's been 2 to 3 years maybe at this point. But the challenge is we get new students every year, and our ones that have reached a level of we'd like to keep them, and we all sorry, let me rephrase that. We want to keep them all, but they graduate, and so we have to start again with a new batch. So it's not a continuous process from a standpoint of linear progression. It's always a process of building him up and moving forward, and building up and moving forward again. More questions? Yes.
So when you find a new detection or some sort of alert that you haven't seen before, is there kind of like a database that you go to get more information on it, or is it mostly collaborative with other people?
So when you say new detection, can you expand upon that?
So some detection that you haven't seen, or some pattern that you've just never seen before, whether it's like beginner, like just starting to use this, or as you progress as an intermediate, like, hey, this is a really weird issue that I haven't seen on this network before. Is it more of a situation where you would talk to your colleagues about it to get more information, or would you have the information that you need there to do online research, or?
So I guess I should ask you a question. Are you asking from the student analyst perspective or just in general? Let me pass it on to Kylan.
So if there's a new detection, I'm unfamiliar and trying to get more information on that. So it's generally a process. Sometimes I'll ask someone else if they're familiar with it and get whatever information I can there. We also have our playbooks that we reference, and if there's no playbook and no one's familiar, then we go to one of our staff members, reach out to them, and usually they can provide assistance, and then we'll begin doing research and looking into that data more and create our own playbooks if that detection is something that we expect to see again.
So to add on to that, so the staff are mean. We're not going to give the answers. We're not going to let them hang out to dry. We want them to reach the solution so that we have a timely response to it. But we do want them to use that opportunity to form that understanding, create that neuron connections in their brain about what is going on here and what does that mean. There's a lot of esoteric knowledge out there that is necessary at times to understand an actual detection. And sometimes, the students are not going to know that because they have not run across that before. So we're trying to teach them the framework to build that understanding, but also use those opportunities where that are unique to have them learn from them as well.
And I'm going to jump in here because we are now on a networking break until 2:30. I have not been told that I'm gone. Additional questions from him?
I'm happy to sit here and network in this fashion. Sounds great. So if you want to leave, I appreciate your time at this presentation.
And if you didn't scan your thing already or you're not sure, just go ahead and scan it again on the way out.
But if you want to stick around and ask more questions, step up, raise your hand, however you want to do this, fine.